What's going on, football fans? It's your boy Gsluke with our DFS and prop preview for week 11 of the NFL season. Gonna help you out with your DFS lineups and any pick'em slips that you plan on entering. But first off, a breakdown of the DFS side and what we're doing for our DFS lineups. That'll include my top 3 quarterback stacks, 3 game environments that I'm getting well over the field on, try and find some correlation, try and find ourselves towards the top end of some of those contests. And then afterwards, we're gonna focus on the underdog and the prize pick side with a few props that have already mixed in that you might want to consider tailing for yourself. So by the end, you have a pretty good game plan of how to attack the Sunday slate and a few pieces of exposure that you might want to tail yourself. So let's go ahead, hop on in, not waste any time at all. Quarterback stack number 1 is going to be Matthew Stafford and the Rams going up against the Seattle Seahawks, and that total is one of the higher ones that we have on the slate at just about 48.5 points, depending on which book you're looking at. And with the high total comes a lot of projected offense, and Matthew Stafford's an MVP candidate for a reason. He's got 2 of the best pass catchers in the NFL to use as well. That, of course, helps us out with our stacking. You could use both of them or just one of the 2, and then one of your secondary players and make a really good set of 3. And then with the buybacks, you've got a lot of capable players on that side as well. So whether it's JSN, maybe the number 1 player that we have in fantasy for this year, Rashid Shaheed, who just got traded to them. You have Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker III at running back, and even some of the more tertiary options like a Kupp, a Barner, or an Arroyo at the tight end position can help you get some leverage as well. And while Matthew Stafford's not a low-owned quarterback, there are guys that are closer to 1, 2, maybe 3% on this kind of slate. 5% ownership is about average at the position, and I would argue with the game total, with the kind of numbers that he's put up this year, he should be one of the higher owned options that we have. So you could even consider a Sam Darnold stack on the other side. He's going to be $5,700 in GPPs. He's got a little bit of a lower projection, doesn't have as good of options on offense, which is why I slightly prefer the more expensive option in Stafford, but the ownership's also lower on Darnold as well. So I like that game in general. Both teams that are somewhat capable on that offensive side, and I like that high implied team total as well. Next up, we got Caleb Williams going up against the Minnesota Vikings. This is also one of the higher totals that we have of the week at about 48.5 points, just like game number 1. And Caleb Williams, because he has a little bit more rushing upside than a Matthew Stafford, I'll be using with 1 to 2 pass catchers. And it wasn't something that we noted before, but Stafford is somebody I'll be using with 2 pass catchers every single time I'm stacking him. That's because of the lack of rushing upside that he brings to the table. Caleb Williams is a little bit more live in that category. So whether it's him scoring a rushing touchdown, getting you 40 to 50 yards in that category, sometimes will mean that he's only bringing along 1 pass catcher when he's making it to the optimal lineup. But the Minnesota defense is one of the stingier units, which is why if we take a look at JJ McCarthy's ownership, he's the side of this game that's getting the steam. And the first game we went through was about 8% combined ownership between those 2 different spots. In this game, it's about 15% combined ownership. So a little bit more steam that's going to this sort of option, but it's the Minnesota side that most people are seemingly going with. And maybe it's the salary is $700 cheaper than what we have with Caleb Williams. His points per dollar projections also more efficient at 3.67 points per dollar value there, but McCarthy has not had as strong of a season as a Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has been in shootouts time and time again here in 2025. I'd rather take him in my large shell GPP exposure, but I can get him at that 4% mark and still get access to the other side of the game when it comes to my buybacks. And maybe it's more concentrated with Justin Jefferson having a massive game, one of the 2 running backs going for 2 touchdowns that way. There's ways where that game environment, even the Minnesota team in general, can still score a whole lot of points, and Caleb Williams is the one that you have to have. So in the buybacks, you've got Jefferson, as I mentioned, but also an Addison and Jones. You have Mason at that running back position as well. Hawkinson or even a Naylor as the wide receiver 3 are all very usable. A Naylor, a Jordan Mason, a Hawkinson are all going to be sub 10% owned, so they would be spots of leverage on top of Caleb Williams. And although Odunze is going to be relatively chalky for the Bears, anyone other than Odunze should be sub 10%. So DJ Moore, a Loveland, a Kmet at tight end, a Swift, Monangai, a Burden. I think Swift will be the only other player on that team that's over 10%, but I'm mostly looking at pass catching options when I'm stacking up with Caleb Williams anyways. And there might be a few lineups where I'm using Swift. Maybe he catches a receiving touchdown, and that's how those 2 end up getting there together. But the pass catching options on Chicago are also being a little bit overlooked. And, in Addison's higher owned than Moore on the Bears. The number 1 wide receiver for Jefferson is also higher owned than Odunze on the Bears side of things. So in large field GPPs, I think that that's where the opportunity is. And then lastly, the last quarterback stack that we have is my favorite of the week. It's not because I'm a Steelers fan, but at $5,400, Aaron Rodgers is going going to have a big week, or at least he's setting up to have a really big week. He got a really high total, 49.5 points on a lot of the major books. In fact, even higher than what we had in those first few games. And Aaron Rodgers has an amazing matchup against that Bengals secondary. They've been absolute burnt toast all year. They're one of the worst units against the rush and the pass towards the start of 2025, which can sometimes be made up for by Joe Burrow going off on the other side. But unless Flacco is throwing for 3 to 4 touchdowns, like he has a few times this year, they've been, losing or at least been hardly winning games against crappy teams. So I'd rather have the Aaron Rodgers side, should have the better defensive matchup. The Steelers have also come into their own over the last couple weeks with putting Ramsey at safety and also having Duggar back there as well, who they traded for from the Patriots. That, I think, is why Aaron Rodgers is projecting so much better than a Joe Flacco on the sports books, and he also doesn't have the questionable tag. Flacco should be playing on Sunday. I would not expect him to be sitting out, as he played through it the last time out, but Aaron Rodgers fully healthy, and he can also, just like in the last game, though Jamar Chase is somebody that you'd have a hard time avoiding in this game, you could use him as your buyback. You could use an Aaron Rodgers, a Metcalf, then one of the cheaper players on the Steelers for a little bit of leverage, and then use the Jamar Chase in that buyback position, because Jamar Chase is going to get even more usage than normal when the Bengals are playing from behind. And you'd have to think if the Bengals are also going to win this game, that Jamar Chase is going to have a lot to do with it as well. So regardless of which side you're getting to in this game environment, I'm going to want to have Jamar Chase in almost every single build that I'm going with. But the Aaron Rodgers led side, even at slightly higher ownership, I do have him at 8.9%, is I think worth it in the large shell GPPs, but especially in cash/single entries, where you don't have to worry about that ownership angle nearly as much. So to find the rest of my player pool, guys, you guys can find that on my Patreon page. I'll link in the description of the video to go out there and check it out. NFL DFS tier is how you get access to these spreadsheets, but not only all of my quarterback projections, but obviously all these other positions covered as well. So there's the running back, the top of it right there. Every position completely uncensored with my entire player pool, projections, core plays, how I'm using my quarterbacks and how I'm stacking them in my exposure as well. And just like you saw with the Caleb Williams, who was a little bit more rushing heavy than those other two quarterbacks, I'm going with 2+ pass catchers with Rodgers in every case. And rather than having you guys have to figure that out for yourself, I know some people are a little bit newer to NFL DFS and need a little bit of a helping hand along the way and have to learn how to go out there and build lineups for themselves. That's what's so great about my product, because not only do I give you accurate projections, all the data that you'll find on other websites, but I also go into a little bit more detail on how to actually play your lineups, so that you can learn and build up that process. So check it out if you guys haven't already. But now let's go into the prop side of things. Our props up for this week is going to be a 3-legger on Underdog. So this is a 6x payout if we end up going 3-0. And I ended up playing this as 2-2-mans. The one pairing that we were going to have with Waddle on Prize Picks ended up getting moved, so we're just going to take these 3 on Underdog instead. So you got Jalen Waddle for the under on touchdowns first. He's +105, he's +110 on all the major books to score. We don't have any of the two-way markets yet where you can take the yes and the no on an anytime touchdown, but typically when somebody's +105 or +110 to score on DraftKings FanDuel, like Waddle is, when we get the Pinnacle market, which has that yes and no, he's -135 to -150 towards the under. So I'm going to mix this in on Waddle before we get that sort of line, because when we do, the sites like Underdog and Prize Picks are going to rip that off of the board. So if we can anticipate that line movement before it happens, that's a way that we can lock in some of this value. We just have to know what to look for on those websites to find some of that value. And on top of just the potential plus EV value that we have on the spot, Waddle's not a big red zone threat. He's had 3 touchdowns over the last 5 weeks. However, all of them have been from 38+ yards. They've been deep downfield threats. They've been sometimes yards after catch, him taking a little bit of a 10 to 15 yarder and turning it into the 40-50 yard touchdown. That's not something that you can sustainably do an entire year. I mean, normally these guys that are at 0.5 anytime touchdowns at wide receiver are your Jeffersons, your Jamar Chases, guys that we talked about during the DFS section that are huge priorities if you're playing over there. They're the guys that should be 50-50 for this sort of projection. Not a Waddle who's a smaller bodied guy. He's not going to high point the football in the red zone. He's really got to get one of those big play touchdowns to get there, and I'll fade that at even money. So that's the first prop that we have out of those 3. Next up is going to be a Woody Marks under on fantasy points. Nick Chubb is expected to play this week. He was a little bit banged up a couple weeks back, but he is healthy now. However, Marks is going to get most of the touches for the Texans, so that's why he's projecting so much higher than he has for the rest of the year. However, I think these sportsbooks books have overdone it a bit. I still think Chubb's going to get the ball probably 35% of the time. So a 70% target share for the Texans running back Woody Marks here is not enough for him to have a 13.75 projection. First off, on Prize Picks, he's at 13.5 points, so he is 0.25 higher over here on Underdog. However, it is a half PPR type of scoring on Underdog as opposed to a full PPR that we have on Prize Picks, and considering that he's at 1.5 receptions and he is juiced towards the over, that's essentially worth a point difference from website to website. So this is like him being at 14.75 points on a Prize Picks, and we know that he's down at 13.5, so that's a 1.25 differential right there. So if you're going to fade more Woody Marks, the site to do it on is over here on Underdog, and the things to add on here is that he's got about a 62.5 rushing yard line, he's got a 13.5 receiving yard line, 1.5 reception yard line, but he's plus 145 to plus 150 to score. So once again, when we get those two-way markets, he might even be close to minus 200 or more not to score. And even if he does score, let's go back and just do the math with the projections that we have, about the 75 total yards, maybe the 1.5 points. That's a 9-point projection right there, just based on your pure usage alone. To get to 14 points, you've got to score a touchdown to make up that 4.75 points right there. That's a lot. That 4.75 points is like he would be juiced minus 150 to minus 200 towards the over. That's normally when you get that kind of implied touchdown equity. When he's almost minus 200 not to score, I mean, Chubb's the bigger back that they're going to use in the red zone more often. That's, I think, where he's going to get his touches on this sort of a game. If you take away a lot of that touchdown equity from Woody, this projection just doesn't make any sense at all. So again, a little bit of a value compared to what we have on Prize Picks when you account for that half PPR scoring, but also regardless of site, even on Prize Picks, I think is probably a bit too high considering the running back situation at hand. And then the last one we have here would be Travis Etienne Jr. for the under on anytime touchdowns, and he is minus 153 towards the under on Pinnacle. So that's one of the few games where we actually have gone the anytime touchdown odds. Pinnacle, takes their time. They really go through the board and make sure they're putting out accurate odds before they get everything up there. And on some of the other websites, he's plus 105 to plus 115 to score as well. So kind of like the Waddle situation, that's when we tend to get guys in that minus 140 to minus 155 range not to score. You have the Chargers defense, that's a top 10 unit in total defense for the year. You've also got the Jags as 3-point underdogs heading into this weekend. So if they're playing from behind, that could work against him from the game script perspective. It is only a 3-point spread though, so I think that's maybe a little bit of a stretch to incorporate that in our analysis, but it's a plus EV lean with that minus 153 juice towards the under in a tough defensive matchup. So with all three of those, that is a 6x payout if we end up getting them all correct. For the rest of the exposure that I'm taking for Sunday slate, you guys can find that on my Patreon page as well. Underdog Prize Picks props that I'm entering, you'll find over there. Also anything on Hard Rock Bet that I'm playing as well are posted there for my members, and not just the props, not just the slips that I'm entering as I'm doing so that you can catch them before they move, but also all the reasoning behind it. I make sure that you guys know exactly why we're playing what we are so that you can use that same kind of idea and extend it to the rest of the board and become a better of the NFL yourself. So again, link in the description to check out the Patreon. NFL prop tier is how you get access to all of these. Highly recommend checking it out if you guys haven't already. Alrighty guys, that's all I've got for the DFS and prop preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, and go ahead and comment down below who you've got as the top scorer on Sunday's main slate for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page. And as long as you guys guess the correct top score, you'll win a free month access to everything that I have on the NFL side. That'll include my DFS projections that we have with the spreadsheet before, with every single position fully covered. Also my entire player pool for DFS. And on the prop side of things, all the Underdog, Prize Picks, and Hard Rock Bet props that I'm entering for NFL as well. So go ahead, enter that giveaway if you guys haven't won it. Again, it is the top score for Sunday that you guys have to guess to win that. First come, first serve basis. So once a player's guessed once, don't guess it again because the second person is not going to win it. So early bird gets the worm. Go ahead, claim your player before anyone else steals them from you, and best of luck with everything that you're going with, whether it's in the large scale GPPs. I hope you guys can take down a few contests this weekend. It's cash out in some of our prop exposure as well. Add to the bankroll and have ourselves a weekend.